From the studios of Clean Fuels Alliance America, this is the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast. Fascinating ideas and conversations in the world of biodiesel, renewable diesel, and sustainable aviation fuel. Now, here's your host, Scott Tremaine.
And welcome. On this week's episode, Clean Fuels Technical Director Scott Fenwick catches up with Mike Harrington with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Well, this is Scott Fenwick, Technical Director for Clean Fuels Alliance America. And joining me today is Mike Harrington with the state of Iowa. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Scott.
So if you could, kind of introduce our listeners to yourself a little bit, if you wouldn't mind telling everyone about your role here in the state of Iowa and the role that your organization plays here with regards to the biomass-based diesel industry.
Sure. So my name is Mike Harrington. I'm with the Iowa Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, the Weights and Measures Bureau. I was hired in 2007 to start a fuel quality program for the state. We would go around and collect samples of biodiesel and ethanol from both of the production plants. Then we would go around and collect samples at all of the pipeline terminals and the retail locations. They would be then tested at the Iowa Central Fuels Testing Laboratory, and results would be available or posted to anyone that was interested. We would, look at all of the aspects of the quality on them and ensure that quality fuels are what are available on the marketplace in Iowa.
Yeah, it's really important that people understand the role of weights and measures in the marketplace. You know, we talk about equity for the consumer, and it's important. It's fuel quality is the cornerstone of our industry. We've relied on that, and Clean Fuels has touted that for our industry for more than decades. And that's really important. And so you're really where the rubber hits the road. You are the fuel regulators that are covering and ensuring that from the production of our renewable fuels to the consumption, that everything is what it's supposed to be.
You're right. I originally came from a gas station industry, and it was surprising how little our industry would check on some of the quality for some of the small marketers. So when I came into the role of the weights and measures role, I had a little bit of background and a little bit of expertise, and we were able to collect some samples and provide information to retailers to help ensure that their offerings were meeting good quality and how they could protect their fuel and their consumers. It was eye-opening to change industries.
Yeah, I'd say it's so critically important because for a soccer mom or soccer dad that pulls up to the pump, they put a nozzle into a little hole on the side of their vehicle and they squeeze that handle. They just have an expectation that whatever transaction just occurred, whatever they just did, it's going to work. Now we know in state of Iowa and across the entire industry, I have a lot of really intelligent people working on specifications and test methods at ASTM and such. But you're the ones that put those into place. You're the one that, as you mentioned, are pulling samples and testing it. How often do fuels in general, get tested in the marketplace?
So for the retail side, the inspectors will go around and test the accuracy and correctness of all of the gas pumps and the diesel pumps and once a year. And we will pull samples at that time. Then we routinely will go back and check spot check locations on a randomized basis, so that we can, tell that, if there was a problem before that it's been fixed. We can ensure that, just because we had a good test in the summertime, that conditions haven't changed. We notice a lot of tank issues when there are weather extremes, when it's too dry and there's drought season, or if it's too wet and flood season. Conditions in the ground soil can change and lead to, water infiltration in tanks, or, just pipes cracking and breaking. So we try and go around and check different times of the year. We don't check every station the same time of the year. Otherwise, you're always going to get the same results. For the production side, we get around quarterly and pull samples from ethanol plants and biodiesel plants. We do the same with the pipeline terminals. And then during the wintertime, when a consumer might see a lot of semis stuck on the side of the road because the consumer might not know why, but sometimes it can be because of diesel gelling issues. So we go around to all of the pipeline terminals in the wintertime once a month and collect samples to ensure the quality of the diesel fuel coming in will not lead or isn't susceptible to some of that diesel gelling problems.
Yeah, and that's important to note as well, is that you are literally checking samples from production facilities, storage and terminaling facilities, as well as the retail level. So all stages of the supply and distribution chain.
Correct.
Yeah, fuel quality is, while it's important certainly to our industry, really just one aspect of what Weights and Measures does. We talk about equity for the consumer within the Weights and Measures community. And so tell me a little bit more about Weights and Measures in particular, or as a whole, and all of the different aspects that fall within your responsibility.
Sure. So Weights and Measures is a very broad bureau. We do a lot of things that people just don't realize that we do. They all expect that somebody's doing it, but don't realize that it's their state's Weights and Measures program that do it. We check the gas pumps. That's the big one for all of the states, as far as making sure that they are accurate and correct. So not just that, a gallon is a gallon, but we're making sure that all the labels are properly, displayed, that the pumps are in good working condition, the hoses are in good condition, aren't going to fail on a consumer while they're using it. We make sure that the pumps aren't leaking to get, fuel that underneath the gas pumps or into the environment. We also check scales, grocery store scales, truck scales at along the highway, truck scales at cooperatives bringing grain in from the fields. We check the moisture meters for making sure that all of the crops are the right moisture, that that they deduct because a crop is too wet. We're making sure that the farmers aren't shorted any money because they're being docked. We check railroad scales for commodities going down the railroads to make sure that they aren't causing undue strain on the railroad system, and to make sure that the product inside you're buying and selling the correct amount that is loaded in those cars. We also do price verification at grocery stores so that scanned prices are what ring up at the cash register, and there are a wide array of many other things though that Weights and Measures entails.
Mike, I really appreciate everything that you and the state does to help protect consumers, particularly with regards to fuel quality. But tell me a little bit more about, how often do you see issues? Are consumers well protected with the fuels that are in the marketplace today?
Sure. So we occasionally find issues based off of all of our sampling and all of our, whether we find or reject a fuel sample for one or more aspects of fuel quality. We find about a 3%, problem batch. Most of that in Iowa is because we have underground storage tanks in Iowa, and just the introduction of water, or the possibility of the introduction of water, whether it's in a gasoline product or a diesel product, that is where most of the problems start in Iowa. Our inspectors will check the tanks for water. We will compare it to the station's water detection system and make sure that that their detection system is working properly, and then just as well as take the samples and check for saturation levels. So not just freestanding water, but saturated water in fuels that makes it more susceptible to problems once the consumer has it in their vehicle.
Now, the state of Iowa certainly is a leader in the production of biofuels such as biodiesel. How do we compare with that 3% on average, issues that arise?
When I talk to other states, it's surprising to me that how many states do not have an active program. I was hired in 2007 to start an active program here in Iowa. Before that, the inspectors would be reactive. They would go out and, once there was a consumer complaint, they would go out and then pull samples and check. We probably find, my inspectors probably find, 25 to 30 instances where fuel is in that beginning to be a problem phase, or we find that a water level in a storage tank is almost to that problematic stage. So I think that we have a very proactive, but many states they do not have a proactive program, and they're still in that reactive phase. So it's difficult to compare percentages. When you're reactive, that's 100% failure rate. So in Iowa, our numbers were more realistic with 3%, meaning that 97% of the time, you're going to get great fuel. 3% of the time, you might have a little bit of a problem, or your car might run a little bit strange, but when you refill with fuel, then it runs normal again. And a lot of times consumers don't realize what that means. They just think, oh, that was strange. But we try and take care of the problems before they become problems here in Iowa.
Yeah, I think that's really important for people to understand that 3% of samples where you find an issue doesn't necessarily mean that a car has been left stranded on the side of the road. And so, yeah, it is helpful to understand the severity of some of these problems that occur.
You're listening to the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast.
And we're speaking with Mike Harrington, Bureau Chief for the State of Iowa Weights and Measures Group. Well, let's back up a year. Governor Kim Reynolds, here in the state of Iowa, been a leading proponent for biofuels, signed some legislation that led to additional tax incentives for the sale of biodiesel blends, including B30 here in the state. What's that meant for you and your group?
Well, we have seen some B30 offerings and B50 offerings at some fuel locations, throughout the years. Stations put in blender pumps, and they were able to offer those blends. With Weights and Measures, we don't really get too much in on the sales of it, so I don't know what the sales quantity of those products were, how popular they were, or anything. But when we're out there, we would pull samples and test the pumps. We have a couple of field analyzers that we're able to test right on the spot to make sure that blend quality that they're offering does meet what they're offering. Then we would pull samples and have it confirmed back in a laboratory at the Iowa Central Fuel Testing Laboratory that our field results were what we were seeing. With that legislation, I notified our inspectors to be on the lookout and to report back what they're seeing in the field, how much the growth of that is. I didn't hear a whole lot this year with it being the first year that has been introduced. I know that there are locations out there, but I can't name any off the top of my head. But we're doing the same thing to make sure that the dispensers are labeled properly so that the consumer is well aware of what they're getting, and that the quality of that fuel is reliable, that they can count on that fuel being of that blend and of being of quality. And then with our samples at the pipeline and our samples at the biodiesel production facilities, they can be assured that there are two quality products making a final finished quality product.
And from your role, that really is good news. It's no news or no complaints with regards to B30 in the marketplace is really what consumers want to hear. It's that confidence.
Yes, I enjoy not finding problems. I enjoy that every result that we see come back, or a majority of the results are all passing results. They all meet ASTM specifications.
Well, if I could kind of ask you to look into your crystal ball, leading the nation in retail sales of higher biodiesel blends, is this going to continue? What are you hearing from some of your colleagues in other states? Is this going to be a trend, or is this an Iowa issue?
I do believe it's a trend. So Iowa was, a leader with that, with Governor Kim Reynolds signing that legislation. All of our legislators that pushed all of that legislation, that was part of an E15 access standard. So in addition to the biodiesel, we're leading the nation in pushing E15 throughout the state. So with that legislation, other states are looking to us to, are asking what types of languages we used, what programs the Weights and Measures Bureau is doing to meet with those, because I think other states are looking at that legislation as well. So we are a leader in that, but we will not be alone in what we're doing with increased biofuels in the marketplace.
One last thing for you is as we look at higher blends, not just here in Iowa, but across the country, Clean Fuels touts that these are drop-in fuels. And I just want to confirm with you as well that you're not seeing changes in infrastructure. You don't have a different set of vehicles here in the state using these fuels. This is the same infrastructure, the same pipes, the same tanks, the same dispensers, the same vehicles that are using traditional ultra-low sulfur diesel fuel in other places around the country today. Is that correct?
Correct, yeah. A lot of times we will see a station, that may have dabbled, originally in a B2 that, increased to B5, and then now they're, well into up to the B20 limits without us. In Weights and Measures, we're paying attention to the dispensers. We're paying attention to all of the piping and everything. And we see that change in the fuel without any changes in the infrastructure. We can still tell that it's the same old pumps, the same old piping. So we know that nothing has been changed out, that they've been able to, switch and convert and increase their blend offerings without, any type of additional cost to them.
Well, I know you're familiar with our BQ 9000 program, that quality management system for biodiesel producers, marketers, and laboratories that are testing biodiesel across the country. Is that helpful to you in your role? And I know Iowa's, again, a leading state in the production, and we think that we've got just about every production facility in the state of Iowa under the program. But what is that program? How does it help or assist you in any way?
Sure. So I love when we talk about the laboratories, because the Iowa Central Fuel Testing Laboratory was the first laboratory in the nation to be BQ 9000 certified. So I really enjoy working with that laboratory and being able to say that when other laboratories will talk about being BQ 9000 certified. I love that the program helps assure that samples that I pull from a regulatory aspect are going to meet a certain standard, that I can go to a BQ 9000 producer and be assured that the samples that we pull are going to pass, have passing results. It also allows us, when we find new producers or unlicensed producers or spot check things, we've found some garage producers of biodiesel that might offer on Facebook, buy sell trade, some batches of biodiesel, and when we're able to find those, we go to those and we don't necessarily throw the book at them. We try and work with them and let them know the importance and the correct steps of marketing a product, because maybe they can produce to the level of BQ 9000. So we will point them in the direction of Clean Fuels Alliance and any of the other marketers and the Iowa Biodiesel Board, and we'll try and give them all the help they can get to become a quality producer and have a great product on the market. If they are not one that is going to do that, then we will work to try and remove them from the market.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate you sitting down with me today, and I'm looking forward to sitting down again in the future as we see higher blends, B30, maybe even, as you mentioned, B50, infiltrate the market more so here in the state of Iowa. And so hopefully we can sit down again in the future and talk more about that.
Certainly. Thank you, Scott.
And thank you for listening. Be sure to rate, review us whenever you listen to podcasts, and join us next week for another episode of the Better, Cleaner, Now podcast.
Thanks for listening. Better, Cleaner, Now is a production of Clean Fuels Alliance America. Follow us at cleanfuels.org and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Clean Fuels Alliance America, visit us at cleanfuels.org.